Lauren, resident biochemist at the Mineral Body, and we're continuing our series on the 12 biochemic minerals, now looking at mineral number 2, which is calcium phosphate, here in Australia anyway. So, calcium phosphate, keywords to remember here are bones, number 1, but also regeneration. So, calcium phosphate, vital for cell renewal and healthy red and white blood cells. This is the primary mineral bone is composed of. So 57% of all bone is this one mineral, calcium phosphate. And from the bone marrow specifically, all of the red blood cells are manufactured. So this mineral is hugely indicative of overall blood health, our ability to make enough red blood cells. Also, the white blood cells are formed in the bone marrow, so this is all of our a lot of our immune ability is coming from the bone marrow's health. So we look after the bone marrow and we look after both the blood and the immune system. The bones are the basis of good health. We must look after the bones, and the bones will look after us. So, this mineral chemically unites with organic elements in the body to form a kind of cement used to build up bones. And this element that the body is using with this mineral is called albumin. To visualize this, the white of an egg, that proteinaceous clear substance, so not the yolk, the white of the egg, that is albumin. It's a proteinaceous substance from which we can manufacture all sorts of different things in the body: flesh, muscle tissue, or bone. So take that egg white, you unite calcium phosphate and a few other elements with the intelligence of the body, you can build bone. That's pretty cool. So this is a strengthening element. So it's strengthening to the bones, blood, and immune function, and it's necessary for protein synthesis and production. That's going to be a big one. Aids in digestive ability. It's calming to the heart and the nerves, and so it affects the heart in the way that expansion and contraction of the heart. To do that, we need both magnesium and calcium phosphate. So you balance these two minerals, and you have a really balanced, steady, strong heartbeat. Very soothing to the overall system. Both of these minerals are also very nourishing and soothing to the nerves, and they're involved in nervous function. So again, you balance those, you soothe the nerves as well. So number 2 and number 7, calcium phosphate and magnesium phosphate. Take 3 of each half hour before bed, you'll have the deepest sleep. Awesome, very much, highly recommend. So, aids in digestive ability, beneficial for allergies, eczema, and intolerance to lactose or gluten. So again, your ability to actually uptake, utilize, and produce proteins, this is going to influence your ability to digest certain things, and also your allergic response to things. In any of these areas, calcium phosphate is going to be hugely beneficial, hugely soothing. So should proteins in the body not be able to be utilized, and they begin to be thrown off through the lungs, that's one of our excretory mechanisms, you'll develop a cough. And the kind of sputum, the kind of casts you will have from this cough will be proteinaceous. They will be albumin-like. They will look like white of an egg. If you see that, you know that your proteins are getting thrown off. Calcium phosphate will correct this. If these proteins are getting thrown off through the skin, which is another excretory organ, we're sweating out toxins all the time. If we're having to sweat out proteins, if they're just sitting in the skin, they start to heat up and ferment, and that causes irritation, that causes inflammation. So, should proteins start to get thrown off through the skin, through the sweat, this will be eczema. This is what we will see as eczema. That's protein getting thrown off under the skin and fermenting due to the body heat, causing inflammation, irritation, and itching. Not pretty, but calcium phosphate is going to help you out there. I suffered with eczema for a long time. Not anymore, thankfully. Should this proteinaceous matter start to get thrown out through the gastrointestinal tract, this can interfere with digestion. So, this can manifest in many different ways. All of it is dysregulation of proteins. All of this will be corrected via calcium phosphate's regulatory action. So this mineral is found in all cells, so that's a big one, take note of that. highest amounts in the bones. The bones are a storehouse for minerals, so we build up that bone density and we build up a reserve of minerals that, should we get sick or ill or injured, we can draw from without interfering with daily processes. If the bones get depleted and then we get an injury or an illness, we have to draw from our own resources, interfere with daily processes, get sick in order to heal. So make sure we look after the bones, we look after the reserves, and this will be hugely beneficial in terms of how we deal with illness or how easily we come down with certain illnesses. So notes on usage for this mineral. Because it is contained in large amounts in the body and in the bones, and because it is both a structural and a functional mineral, by this I mean it's structural in terms of we use it to build up bone and we store it in the bones, but it's functional in terms of we use it to produce new blood cells, to produce new white blood cells. So we're using it all day long as well as using it for structural reasons. So because of these two reasons, some of the remedies involving calcium phosphate can involve quite a large amount of tablets per day for quite a few consecutive days. If you're targeting something like osteoporosis, building up bone density, that's going to involve quite a lot of tablets for quite a while. Conditions like growing pains in children, totally optional, by the way. It's primarily calcium phosphate. It's literally an ache for calcium. The bones are growing. They need more of the primary mineral involved with bone growth. Pretty logical when you think about it, but I wish I knew that as a kid. So yes, conditions like growing pains, you may need to supply 3 minerals 3 times a day, and this might be 2 weeks, that kind of rate. It's quite a lot of tablets, but we're doing quite a lot. We're growing bones. That's a big job. And if you should be supplying these minerals during this growing pain kind of phase, you'll also see all of the mental symptoms, all of the tantrums, the strained nerves, all of that will start to get regulated too, because they're depleting the minerals involved with nervous regulation. And these poor little buggers, they can't regulate their nerves if they're depleting their bones. Make things easier on yourself and the little ones. If growing pains come up at all, calcium phosphate. Some of the other applications for this mineral, so allergies, any and all allergies, anemia, that's a big one. If you are diagnosed anemic and no amount of iron supplements help or seem to get anywhere, then it's not a problem with the amount of iron, it's a problem with low blood cells, not enough blood cells to hold that iron. So no matter how much iron you're supplementing, it's not going to fix the low amount of iron when that is due to not enough blood cells to hold enough iron. So in order to remedy this, we address the bones, we build up the marrow, build up the ability to make new blood cells, and with the influx of new blood cells, we have the capacity to hold more iron. Often that anemia will correct itself just by targeting the bones and using calcium phosphate. So for the appetite, balances the appetite. For backaches, cold extremities, should that be a circulatory issue? Could be a lack of blood issue, so we could build up that blood and bring warmth back to the extremities, because the body's always going to be prioritizing the organs. If it only has so much blood to go around, it would prefer it around the heart, lungs and organs than it would the toes. So for colds, if you're particularly susceptible to catching every cold that comes around, you might need to build up your immune ability, build up your fundamentals, build the bones. So for growing pains, general ill health, lack of muscle tone, memory lapses, for muscle cramps, for numbness in the limbs, night sweats, particularly of the head and neck, osteoporosis, builds bone density. For tooth decay, calcium fluoride is the primary mineral of the enamel. Primarily, the internal structure and bulk of the tooth is calcium phosphate. So building up the teeth, repairing tooth decay, you would want to be using this mineral. Also calcium fluoride to make sure that the enamel is strong as well. Look after it both within and without. Some of the facial tells for this mineral, this one's a little bit more subtle and difficult to diagnose, can be anyway. So a kind of waxy colouring to the skin. The face can look somewhat like a wax figure. And you could see the color has been described as kind of like cheesy, pale, white, but like ivory. And you might see this paleness isolated only to around the eyebrows. I very much recommend this little book, by the way. It has caricatures of the facial cells. Not actual images, but it says waxy face. The waxy shine appears first on the ears, upper part of the face worse. Physical exercise causes a yellowish, reddish, white color. Deceptive, therefore only to be diagnosed when inactive. So, not right after they've been running around outside. And it's got white as a lime wall. We don't have lime walls very commonly these days. Some of the other tells, freckles and copper-coloured spots can be another tell for it, but that can be confusing as well because biochemic mineral number 6, potassium sulfate, as well can show copper-coloured spots and freckles as one of its tells. The teeth are a good way to look for this one. So in adults, you might see a transparency to the tips of teeth. I'd be looking at both this mineral and calcium fluoride. But in children specifically, a sore edge to teeth, calcium phosphate, big time. That's an easy one to see. So rely on that one, rely on the symptoms, and if in doubt, build the bones. There's no downside to building bone. This one's a handy one to have. It's contained in huge amounts in the body. It's difficult to see visually, but it's fundamental. So this one, always consider it. It's a good one to have on hand. I would recommend it. Especially living in Australia, this might actually be a worldwide issue, actually. The low magnesium in soils is widespread, and that is a problem. Low magnesium means you cannot uptake calciums. So magnesium phosphate, biochemic mineral number 7, and calcium phosphate, biochemic mineral number 2, these two are very important just as general maintenance for Australians due to the low magnesium content in the soils, meaning that we have less ability to uptake calcium just through our general diet. So to get around this, if we take these two minerals, we can help keep our fundamentals looked after. Because if you get dysregulated magnesium and dysregulated calcium, then your bones start getting depleted, and the bones are the basis of health. Once that starts happening, we have all sorts of problems. So we've got low immunability, we've got depleted bloods, we've got low iron, low energy, we're susceptible to all sorts of things, and our defense is low. Look after the bones. Okay, so the tongue tells for this one. So a thick white coating on the tongue. You might have a furry sensation and a sweet taste to the mouth would be indicative of deficiency. And the casts, so the sputum, anything that comes out proteinaceous, albumin-like. So anything like that white of an egg would be calcium phosphate. If you cough up anything like that, take some calcium phosphate, the next couple coughs will not be like that. That's what working with these biochemic minerals is like. Because they dissolve directly through the mucosal membranes, through the cheeks, and through the sublingual tissues under the tongue, directly into the capillaries, directly into the bloodstream, within 2 minutes those minerals have been circulated and are dropped off wherever they are most needed. The blood in the human body circulates, I believe, about 45 seconds. It's done a full loop. So the vector for these minerals, using the blood to take these minerals where they need to go, we have very quick results. And if you've ever played with anything in chemistry, you know that the second you add that correct element to the solution, bang, we have chemical reactions, we have impact. When you supply the body the exact mineral it needs to perform that exact function in the body, bang, chemical reaction, impact. The beautiful thing about it is the only minerals we deal with in biochemistry are the literal minerals you are composed of, are what you would find if you analyze the ashes of a biological, of a carbon-based life form. of a human, of an animal, anything on Earth, any carbon-based life form is formed of the same fundamental elements that we compose these minerals of. So other tells for this mineral: drafts, cold, and getting wet would aggravate. So a good example of this is the man who comes inside after being in the rain and the wind, and he's, oh, the cold, the chill, my bones ache. That's a huge tell for calcium phosphate. So warmth and rest soothes. That same person's going to want to come in, warm up, and just rest, and that will soothe that bone ache, that calcium phosphate ache. The numbness won't be affected though. That's just a note on the warmth will soothe, say, the aches, but should they have numbness, that won't be affected, and that's another confirmation that it is in fact calcium phosphate. So yeah, that's calcium phosphate. Just a general overview. There is always so much more to go into. We can try and get it all down to keywords, but it's like painting with primary colours. It's like, yes, it is just this one thing, but then it mixes with this and has hues of that, and everything in the body, it's this huge web of interrelations. But one good thing to remember is bones are the basis, and this mineral is contained in largest amounts out of all the other minerals, so this is a good one to have on hand, and it's always one that should be considered. And again, any questions, just let us know, and if you've enjoyed this, please leave a comment. Thanks, guys.